at Masters Tour Arlington. 4 quarterfinals are done. As we move into the semifinals and take a look around the tavern, French players cheering on their compatriots, the lone wolf from Asia Pacific, Alan Numbers, and other challengers to the throne. Who is going to join our Hall of Champions? We're about to find out as we get to the final 4 competitors in just a moment. Greetings from the commentator's desk. My name is Frodan. I am joined by the ever so technically correct, as always, Subtle.
It's the best kind of correct.
We'll be casting Alan Numbers versus xBlyzes, although I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce his name, so if you know the correct pronunciation, fellow European, correct me.
I have been going with Blizes as well. I do want to start a petition that since Alan is the sole non-French representative, we just make him an honorary Frenchman and go with Alan for the rest of the tournament.
Alan? Yeah, what is a vowel? I don't know. Alan is, as we mentioned, a representative from Asia Pacific. That was information given to us as we were walking up to the desk because Alan has kind of always been on that Asian slash Canadian slash American. I forgive me if I'm wrong there. But Alan's kind of been North American slash Asian for a while, kind of trending line between both. But he moved back to Taiwan last year, so he is playing effectively for Asia Pacific.
Yeah, from what we understand, he has switched his residency, officially with the Hearthstone Esports system. So he is now fighting under the Asia Pacific banner, which means potentially, if the last couple of years are anything to go by, he might have a slightly easier route through in terms of prize standings. Of course, it is split by region. So if Alan is the sole Asia Pacific player to say win a Masters Tour this season, and all the others are taken down, good results come from European and Americas players, then he will pick up one of those Asia Pacific spots. So it might turn out to be a smart idea for him.
We say that, and yet in Americas, it was so competitive with the prize earnings for Grandmasters that
you got into Grandmasters with like $50 and a packet of crisps if you're in America.
The packet of crisps, of course, is to bribe the casters.
Yes.
So, Asia Pacific still highly contested in some parts, but we'll see how things pan out. But top 4 is where you really start to add to that money count significantly. Each series that you're able to win nets you, somewhere between the high 4 digits to maybe even 5 digits. In this case, $15,000 to $25,000.
Yep, $10,000 series of Hearthstone coming up here for these 2 players. 2 players who put in very clean performances, I would say. I think based on our day, I think the upper half of our quarterfinals brackets were cleaner than what we saw afterwards, just in terms of quality of play from the players. I think the Totosh series that I cast certainly had some mistakes in it. The Falcane series had some mistakes in it, both from the mechanics of the game and from the players themselves, as Zephyrus was deciding to get things wrong, and then Falcane obliged by screwing up afterwards as well. But I think the first 2 quarterfinals were very, very high quality, and of course Alan and Blizes were a big part of that.
Yeah, I would say that in those first 2 quarterfinals with Alan and Blizes, both of them had played better than their opponent. I would notice that there were mistakes being made on the other side, at least from Brimful's perspective. I didn't get a chance to look too closely at Bloody-Face's play because I was getting ready for the show. So, feel free to correct me on that. But, Alan has been a rising player within at least Americas for quite some time. He is one of those players that came from the Chinese QQ group that practices both the Chinese server and the Americas. Primarily, it started with the Chinese-Canadian practice group, and that's where players like Silent Storm from back in the day really compete. And then you saw, like, Al Sky High, WTY Bill. All these players that made HCT championship appearance slowly over time came from that group, and Alan was part of that core nucleus that was sort of the think tank. However, that group has largely dispersed and moved on with life or playing other games now. Alan is one of the few people remaining, so he kind of treads once again between the Chinese-speaking scene as well as the English-speaking scene, completely fluid in both.
Great background. Yeah, I saw WTY Bill pop up in a Fortnite tournament at one point, and I was like, "What? This is crazy." Yeah, no, seriously. I was like, "This is crazy." I remember this guy from Hearthstone.
Streaming life is kind of weird. I actually ran into Bill at TwitchCon, and he decided to stop by and say hi to me. Or was it BlizzCon? One of those one of those big cons that a lot of nerds gather. A little too tightly packed. But, Bill was catching up and saying, yeah, I missed the Hearthstone. I kind of want to compete again, but not really sure because, his child's growing up and trying to see if he can be more involved. Right on. So hope all is well over there. Meanwhile, Blizes, he, as well as all the other French players here, dominating the top 8. 3 out of our top 4, but that doesn't necessarily make them anonymous. If anything, xBlyzes has been a mainstay in competitive Hearthstone, top 4, top 8 in so many French tournaments, as well as even making appearances in all these Masters tours.
Yeah, we kind of blew past Alan's lineup just a little bit, but I think the big talking point in there is that Quest Druid, kind of unique deck for him in this tournament. Not a unique archetype, but fairly unique in that he is running a King Phaeorus in there at the top end, which we haven't seen in various other builds, which in his first series of the day went from having 0 impact in one game to having absolutely game-ending impact in the next. So we'll see if that one comes into play here, because he does have it up and available to play.
You love to see it. There are handfuls of Hearthstone players that message me, and I really like interacting with the fans. So anybody that wants to send a message, go ahead and ask questions and whatnot. Some fans always ask me, you know, are there any old decks from even like a year ago that are still kind of viable? And I remember Quest Druid, when it first came out, was very prominent during the Saviors of Old Doom meta. And, you know, it was a King Phaeorus build that was like doing big stuff. And it's kind of nice to see that, like, in the end, these cards, they don't go to waste, right? Even though they might be an expansion or so out from when it was on top, Alan's showing that if you're able to craft a nice game plan around it, you can still find a nice pocket meta where it can be really effective. Right.
You asked for
Speaking of which, Luna's Pocket Galaxy has found the pocket meta in this tournament, because Highlander Mage really came out of nowhere to have a massive impact. From what we've been seeing so far, we've seen it be so very effective in so many matchups. And some of the expected decks that people were really counting on, like the Highlander Warrior that we're seeing on, the Galakron Warrior that we're seeing on Alan's side, and the Galakron Warlock that we've seen from so many players, those decks have seemed to struggle a little bit, kind of performing way under expectations.
Yep, that being said, they still have their good matchups. You know, like Warlock, for example. I think Warlock's matchup versus Druid is the most one-sided thing in this tournament. It's like 67% or almost hitting the 70s.
Wow.
But the win rate of Warlock's still like 50%. So it goes to show you that even if it has a high skewed matchup against a very popular class, it still has some weak points. Similar with Warrior, because I think it is very close to that 50% win rate this tournament.
Sure.
But you know, one of those decks that feels like it still can kind of do a little bit of everything is Highlander Mage, and you mentioned that it's been performing really well. I believe it is also topping the charts in win percentage this tournament. So Highlander Mage, once again, kind of being the bring. We've been seeing Highlander/Control Mage surprise people, even as recent in terms of its dominant performance in the World Championship in 2019. Just a little under a year ago, where Hunter Ace and crew were able to really surprise the field with it, and also led to his championship win.
Yes. Yeah, funny story about that. Like, Hunter Ace ended up winning the World Championship with kind of the slower dragon build of the Control Mage at the time. But then during the aftermath of that tournament, he was going around saying to people like, hey, do you want to play a couple of games of this meme deck that I've found? That meme deck was Cyclone Mage.
Yes.
So he was just a couple of days off of finding an even better deck that would have completely dominated the tournament, would have been so far ahead of the meta.
Absolutely. And of course, Boomsday put it over the top with some of those other things that we saw, including Rise of the Mix. Meanwhile, with Alan going second here, but no answer to the Doomsayer, seems like he is pretty much stalled out here. And I guess the debate would be whether or not he even wants to armor up, right, given that he has Battle Rage. But doesn't really have any purpose to hold it, because if xBlyzes is also paying attention, he's not going to activate that Battle Rage for him.
Yeah, there was a decision for xBlyzes on turn 2 as to whether he wanted to try and hold off and greed the Doomsayer a little bit, because it was a smoother curve for him to Doomsayer this turn on turn 3 and then roll into the Twilight Drake now on this turn that's just passing to him, because that would have given him like the complete empty board as such and given him full tempo with the Twilight Drake. But I think when you look at the amount of damage that Warrior can stack up over a couple of turns, if you start letting them land like Cruel Taskmasters on their minions, Inner Rages on their minions, Bloodsworn Mercenaries on their minions, all that kind of thing, and then start stacking the Invoke effects on top of that as well, I think a turn 3 Doomsayer is actually pretty unlikely to survive against any kind of reasonable start. So xBlyzes just bit the bullet and said, all right, fair enough, turn 2, I'm going to skip a turn on turn 3, but it still reduces a lot of the pressure.
Yeah, Alan also gets himself damaged, so if the Tempo Berserker ends up dying or trading into something, that's a couple of cards drawn, and that's going to be the important thing. With Galakron Warrior, very similar to Rogue, and very similar, honestly, to most Galakron decks, is after a certain point, you want to just present the possibility of killing your opponent every single turn afterwards. And Galakrond Warrior really helps turn on the gas, especially with its hero power naturally leading to damage with that +3 attack.
A pretty smooth curve here so far for Alan, though.
Act as your scale dragon.
Yeah, very reasonable indeed. I'm looking more at xBlyzes' hand to see what he can do besides play this Mountain Giant on turn 6. And it doesn't seem like he has many options here.
Yeah, not a great deal.
Ooh. I had a fun discussion with Hunter Ace backstage about Arcane Amplifier, to which he was like, why are you playing Arcane Amplifier deck? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's weird. I don't know why I would play Arcane Amplifier. I don't think anyone good would ever put it in their deck. And we were just kind of memeing about it back and forth. And of course, the joke is that Hunter Ace put Arcane Amplifier in his own Highlander Mage deck and said it underperformed like crazy.
What
So,
now?
yeah, some risk didn't pay off, but maybe it's working out for xBlyzes. We'll see it apply later on.
Yeah, we are still seeing it in, I believe, the majority of the Highlander Mage list that we've been seeing in the top 8 are still carrying that card. So curious to see how that one pans out. Of course, it is one of the unique parts of this tournament is that we are kind of in this little fresh mini meta where there are a few cards trickling out each week. And the second week of those cards was incredibly fresh coming into this tournament, which really created some difficult decisions for players about whether they wanted to trust their instincts on something that they didn't really have a huge sample size of testing on with some of those newer cards, or whether they wanted to just go with the more tried and true stuff that they've got a huge sample size of practice games on, and we've seen differing opinions.
Yeah, and you know, honestly, I'm a big fan of that. As we see Alan clear off the Mountain Giant, understandably so. You don't want to leave that Giant up for the threat of Conjurer's Calling.
Right.
But yeah, like I like the fact that we are testing the players in every direction, right? Their technical play, their preparation process, but also their spontaneous deck building, and maybe even just some of their raw instinct and arsenal. Yes. Arcane Amplifier as the tempo tool. Alan pretty close to finishing this game out. But not that close just yet.
Yeah, shake of the head comes out from Alan. Clearly not overly enthusiastic about his situation.
Yeah, it's just a little awkward, right? Doesn't seem like he has clean plays this turn, and the ones that do lead to full mana expenditure seem pretty awkward to say the least.
Yes. This Temple Berserker only having 1 health is extremely irritating. A lot of your best tempo plays here would involve getting that Cruel Taskmaster down on the Temple Berserker, and you cannot do that currently. It's very, very awkward. Same thing with Awaken. So it's just making this 2-5 on the other side of the board pretty obnoxious.
Yeah, you know, maybe with the fact that he has shielded Galakrond and Awaken, I'd be more leaning towards fishing my Galakrond out of my deck, because that leads to a 6, or sorry, next turn he has 8 mana, and the following turn he would have 9 to be able to use Galakrond hero power. But that's assuming it works out as cleanly as that does, so looks like instead Alan's favoring board control with that attack.
Yeah, the inefficient trade there. I was going to counter your suggestion with the idea of just, well, since you have those 2 invokes in your hand that represent huge amounts of damage, how about just, you know, setting up lethal, pushing for damage, trying to end the game next turn with the second of the 2 invokes.
That works too.
You can see that plan would have been shut down real sharpish by these 2 Sunwalkers that have come out from the Power of Creation from xBlyzes' side.
Yeah, it does end up having pretty good outcome here for Alan to have the Awaken to pop Divine Shields.
Right.
Then summon a bomb. Hey, maybe even use Cruel Taskmaster in this spot too. Cruel Taskmaster oftentimes is used as like an enabler for some of these Bloodsworn Mercenary combos, but in this case, trying to just fight again for board, threaten the Mage, and the Mage is in an uncomfortable spot. I mean, xBlyzes knows that he's not dead, but he knows that if he could be dead at any second.
Decent draw on the Dragon Caster. Does allow him to tempo out with a Flame Strike at some point. Can also, you got to think of Zephyrus possibilities here as well, because you could play the Zephyrus and pick up expensive spells from the Zephyrus and then still go to the Dragon Caller line.
Right. How can we manipulate this Zephyrus in a way that'll benefit us here?
I don't know anymore, Dan. I'm very much not one to jump aboard the blame Zephyrus train. I think 99% of the time you have yourself to blame for not learning how the card works well enough. But that one in the last series, like that blew my brain apart.
That's the 1%?
That's the 1%, yeah.
It was very much a head scratcher. I wasn't sure. xBlyzes, if he goes to the Zephyrus, I believe will be offered Ban Cleave and maybe Healing Touch as well. SI 7 agent for tempo? It doesn't feel like you're threatened enough, huh?
This guy's toast.
Toasty card making an appearance. Shout out to Disguised Toast, by the way, hitting over 1 million YouTube subs.
Yep. Congratulations.
And his gold button. Proud of you, boy. All right, so is there some miraculous outcome for lethal here? I don't think so. Actually, maybe. If the 1/1 Boombot goes into the Bone Wraith, and then the other Boombot, and it dies, and then the other Boombot goes into the Reborn copy, and then you double Kor'kron Elite, there is that possibility, but it's a pretty outside chance.
Yeah, as long as, you need Boombots to deal max damage to a relevant target. So you could like Kor'kron into the Bone Ray, attack with a Boombot, hit 4 to face, attack with the other Boombot, hit 4 to face, and then use the other Kor'kron as well. Like all that kind of stuff works, but it's ridiculously low odds.
Yeah, you can see the effect of Bomb Wrangler really giving Warlock some extra punch. Bomb Wrangler, if you're able to activate it once by yourself, feels like a miniature version of the old Dr. Boom back in the day.
Yep.
What now?
I think, you know, if you only get one bomb off it, like I still think it's an incredibly comparable card to Imgang Boss, for example, which was considered one of the best 3-drops in the game for quite some time.
Yeah, it's really good with Soul Juggler, and if you can triple up and level, you can actually even hit Mal'Ganis and maybe even Void Lord sometimes. I would say that it is a very good 3-drop. Oh, Power of Creation. Wow, all those extra rush minions in the pool, gets the beast.
Actually picks it as well, just takes the 9/7s, really wants to be threatening a counterpunch lethal of his own.
Sure, I mean, that's 22 plus hero power is 23.
Yep.
Sizable amounts of damage.
He knows Galakron has been drawn though, so he knows it's not really a lethal setup anyway you cut it, but still huge stats on board. The other options were very underwhelming.
And it's so close the opposite way as well. Alan with the claw and the hero power would be 8, plus the 3 power on board would be 11. And Alan's Boombot last turn went face for 1, so...
Yes.
And then the other slice of it too, you know, he has Kor'kron Elites to add the 8 damage. He's also off by 1.
Yes.
A very unsatisfying board state for the Warrior player.
So there's a lot of ways that you could argue about setting up the most secure 2-turn lethal here. Because you can like Galakrons, you can even like Galakron and copy your Boombot to get a, additional source of potential damage and a bigger board and more encouragement for your opponent to trade. You can just use the Galakron and the hero power to push the maximum amount of damage. You could just use the Kor'krons this turn and then rely on the Galakron on the next turn. There are many, many ways to go about doing this. This is one I didn't even mention. It's like using your armor hero power first to get even further out of range of the counter lethal and then swinging for face.
He finds an Eternium Rover as well, which has gotten a big boost. Should be 5/7 minion. Liza's looking for extra damage. Finds Alexstrasza. And that's 22 on the board.
22 exactly. 22 exactly. That extra armor from the hero power did not end up being relevant. The counterpunch Alexstrasza, an enormous pickup for xBlyzes. Alan was so cleanly set up for lethal on the following turn. I believe he had it covered way through that Ziliax that was in hand for xBlyzes there. That was an insane draw off the top. Being outside of that, I don't even think there was maybe Malagos Fireball wasn't out from that point. He still had his Malagos remaining, but outside of that, I think he was kind of drawing dead.
Sure, right, because he had already used his Zephyrus,
yep.
And he was just running low on options. So the draw of Alexstrasza off the top, just enough. But hey, I mean, picking the Beast as a foresight into understanding that, look, if he can't kill me now, then what I need to do is figure out a way to counter swing. So really good recognition for the last few turns there by xBlyzes.
Yeah, and yet again, just Highlander Mage finding a way somehow against the odds. It seems to be going that way. You know, I don't know how much of the Mage's performance is just some of the Mage spiking in this tournament, because we've seen, for example, Bloody Face in a game he was massively favored to lose, drawing the one out at Zephyrus and potentially finding a way out of it. Very similar thing there. I think he was massively unfavored in the position that he was in, and there was probably only one or at most two draws in his deck that really dug him out of it. So, you know, we'll see over time whether this Highlander Mage can really hold up, but for now it seems to be really, really performing for these players.
Yeah, tough break for Alan, but we're just getting started. And I mean, Alan last time was on the receiving end of both, where it feels like he's in a good position to win and making the plays to really hedge both ways. Gets kind of punished off the top of the deck of his opponent in game number 1 of the series. So if that's any indication, Alan's probably going to sweep from this point.
I would not be surprised.
It is a favorable matchup for the Warrior versus the Mage ever so slightly. If you kind of look at some of the data out there, just because it puts a lot of pressure out there. But it's still tough to say, because a lot of these players are teching in cards that we don't have much data with. Like, does Warrior get a lot better now because they have the Boombots? Or does Mage and their 3-drop help them stabilize early? Right.
Your soul shall
Moving on
be
again,
mine.
though, Alan finds himself back on the Warrior. xBlyzes is going to move over to that Warlock. And this Warlock in the last series I cast was far and away the weakest deck in both players' lineup. It was absolutely struggling to find itself a win.
Yeah, I started off the weekend looking forward to seeing Warlock's performance, and then just with each passing day, it just kind of fell a spot or two in terms of my rankings internally. And now I'm kind of putting it as like maybe at best the 4th deck. Most likely the 5th or 6th best candidate.
Yes.
I just feel like it's been underperforming a lot. And it's sad, because I think Warlock is still one of my favorite classes, but it just feels so vulnerable. And there's so many pressure tools, and like a lot of these control decks figure out ways to burst you as well without having to give up as much life as Warlock does.
Your flaws are your strength.
Alan going to tempo out a 3-3 here. I will say that there has been 1 or 2 missed opportunities from the Warlock players and from the casters as well. Certain sacrificial pact plays that weren't really spotted by anyone in the time, which could have potentially made a huge difference in a couple of matchups.
Oh yeah, that's true. There has been some user error in terms of the Warlock, so it could be the fact that Warlock is a lot more nuanced, and maybe we just need to all practice more and get good.
Yes.
So perhaps we are looking at external factors here when we could start looking internally first.
So, sack-pacting other people's minions is so 2019.
What about sack-packing other people's heroes?
Oh, taking it all the way back, 2014.
Alan not able to get any firm control, but the Shield of Galakron helps him put a little bit of pressure onto it.
Yeah, does pick up his 2nd invoke off that as well.
How much do you care as a Warlock player of rushing out Galakron to matchup like this?
I think it varies enormously. It can be pretty crucial, because Warrior's big weakness is it doesn't really counterpunch very well. It's one real like strong removal card is that Scion of Ruin that you coincidentally see Alan has both copies of. So if you can just get a decent couple of mid-rangey minions on the board from just, you know, a half-upgraded Galakron, sometimes you can just leverage that and snowball and switch the aggression and start just beating up on the Warrior. But it really is kind of context-dependent, I'd say.
Well, does Alan go for the Sign of Ruin here to get some of that tempo and push that damage that he has with the Shield of Galakron? Could also utilize Devoted Maniac here, but I'd like the Sign of Ruin just to really disrupt Liza's plays.
This is so icky, I'm upset. I hate trading into snip snaps with a passion.
It does feel bad.
Yeah.
Because you don't really change much except for the 1 health difference, right?
Yeah. It's like, you know, taking it all the way back to 2014 again. It's like you just sack your board into a can and they still have a 4-5. Like, what was the point? Go face.
Right. Or even just like back in the day when people all played like Harvest Golem or the first expansion Nax Rammus with the spider. Oh my god, did I forget the name of this?
Nerubian Egg?
No.
Haunted Creeper?
Haunted Creeper, yeah. Oh gosh, it's getting to that point where Hearthstone just has thousands of cards.
It's just too many cards now, yeah.
Yeah, like I was going through Wild and disenchanting cards because I was because Doe was like, I want to start playing Highlander decks because I'm starting to, you know, really, because he was jamming more of the proactive decks like Galakron stuff and doesn't have the defensive Highlander stuff because it's pretty expensive.
Right.
I was like, just type an extra in your search bar. He's like, oh wow, I have like 20k extra dust. And all these golden cards over the years. And going through, I'm like, I don't remember any of these cards' names. Like, all these different cards over the years. I do remember the impressive ones, of course, but all those other small ones.
It's fine. You're doing better than me. I don't remember the names of cards that came out last week, let alone 4 years ago. Don't worry about it.
All right, well, Snip Snap onto the Eternium Rover. Alan stacking it on 1 minion. I guess Warlock does have hard removal, but they tend to like to go wide with their removals these days.
Yeah, wide, you know, playing Split Snap against Warlock, you almost always just run into to the, there it is, I've forgotten the name of the card, Dragon Blight thing?
Cultist.
AoE, 3 damage AoE thing.
Dark Skies?
Netherwind, thank you.
Sorry. When I just heard 3 damage AoE thing.
I'm just going to pretend that was a bit to follow up the point that I said where I couldn't remember any card names. Of course I remember the name of that card, but yeah, if you split up Snip Snap, you're kind of running into that card all the time, so I think you will see people making the stack pretty often against this deck.
Bad luck, Albatross. Speaking of stacking a deck, just stacked its Albatross right on top and killed Alan's next draw.
Dude, every time. The Albatrosses have been so BM this tournament, like they've all just appeared at the most heartbreaking moments.
Right, and you can't even get mad because it's in a name. It let you know ahead of time what was going to happen.
Yep.
On either side.
Yep.
Either it didn't work the way you wanted to as the player that needs it to work effectively against Highlander decks, or your opponent draws in. They're the one receiving the bad luck. It's very clever. Speaking of very clever, I also like your split splat joke. It was very well thought of, although I do find it ironic that you can figure out the time to learn that, but not other card names.
Priorities, Dad. Come on. Which of the two is more entertaining?
Whichever, I guess, is more for your opinion.
Yeah. It's Split Snap and Snip Stack for the 2 options.
Oh, okay, got it.
You like that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you just sound like you're naming Shake Shack burgers, so I'm not exactly sure if you're actually in copyright infringement, but
We'll find out.
we'll just err on the side of caution. Say that was a subtle original.
On that note, it does upset me that Bad Luck Albatross, like all the, you know, Albatross round the neck puns you can make are kind of already implied by the card, so I kind of feel like I have to stay away from them. That irritates me. Could have given us a little bit more leeway there, dev team.
Fair enough. The board just builds right back up, and Blyze is just using Sacrificial Pact to heal up. No demons on the other side to use. And I guess it makes sense. You know, again, you don't know the burst potential of your opponent. Oh, gosh.
Yep.
Oh, my
I told you,
goodness.
they are BM.
Both Albatross on the top of the deck. How does that happen? That is so rare to see.
Yep. Luckily, Alan does have a little bit of time. If he was under just a little bit more pressure, then these 2 Albatross could have been the final nails in the coffin for him. But he still has a little bit of time to work his way out of this.
Yeah, that window can close pretty rapidly, though. Blyzes has some of his most powerful cards in his hand. He's actually just even avoiding looking at the screen, which is a classic move to try and conquer your nerves while you're like playing a game of Hearthstone, because you just kind of don't want to acknowledge it. But, you know, I think almost every player would say you need to focus on the screen, usually at all times, to make sure you can pay attention to all the small things your opponents are doing.
Yeah, if anything, in Hearthstone, you quite often see the opposite, where players will use their hands to just block all other vision apart from the screen in front of them to make sure that there's nothing distracting them from the screen. It's kind of rare that you see the opposite.
And Liza summons... Whoa.
Garbage is what he summons.
Yeah, that wasn't exactly what he was looking for. You know, I gotta commend Alan as well. I feel like his mental resilience is really showing. I feel like a lot of players would already have given away the fact that they have drawn both Albatross to their opponents. Oh, wow. The fact that the Turning Rover stays on the board gives Alan an extra card draw off Battle Rage.
It does, yep.
And he can go for another damage source through this Core Crown Elite.
I think Blyze is absolutely in the right to go face there, though, because, again, there is a Snip Snap stacked up on this thing, so trading into it is just incredibly counterintuitive. So I think going face there, very, very reasonable. Just happens to get punished by this Battle Rage. It happens, and I think that's exactly the reaction that you just saw from Blyze. Just a little nod. Yep, all right, fine, it happens.
Ritual Chopper, Bomb Wrangler, Core Crown Elite. So if we choose to use our attacks aggressively here, let's say we use Ritual Chopper and Core Crown Elite in the same turn, that's 7 damage plus the 5 on board, and their opponent's at 18. It's not impossible, but it's still looking tough here for Alan.
And now you see the smirk as the second Albatross appeared. Blyze is clearly very pleased with his Albatross RNG up until this point.
And with the Alexstrasza, that does it. There's more than 15 power waiting. And Alan goes down. xBlyzes up 2-0, looking to be the first French player in the Grand Finals and guarantee an all-French Grand Finale.
Yeah, and second burst, same as the first. Just load up a bunch of damage on board, and Alex, your opponent, don't need to do the hard work if you can get all that damage into play exactly the same way that first game ended. Just that Alexstrasza coming down. I think, you know, we haven't seen this much Alexstrasza in the metagame for quite some time. Obviously, that is influenced by how dragon-heavy the game is right now, but Alexstrasza on her own just kind of introduces that X factor of just every board needs your respect once you get to 9 mana. You cannot say, I'm at 30, I can ignore this, because Alexstrasza will put an end to that real quick.
Yep, and, you know, Alan knows it, and he has to sweep the final deck, which we've seen the Warlock get the win. We saw the Mage get the win. It might come down to the Warrior, I believe.
Yep, Warrior's the remaining deck.
So, that's tough. Highlander decks in general are pretty strong, but Highlander Warrior, that deck particularly, I feel like, has a lot of good removal tools for some of the aggressive decks. So if I am Alan, I'm definitely feeling a little unsettled right now.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Highlander Warrior deck that really came out of nowhere for me this tournament, but certainly been super impressed with the kind of old school control warrior feel that it has, where it's not just outright control, it actually starts playing big minions and trying to win the game. So really looking forward to it.
All right, well, we're going to take our break in this series, and when we come back, we're going to get ready for game number 3 between xBlyzes and Alan numbers.
Hearthstone Masters Tour Arlington is brought to you by T-Mobile. Rank up with America's first and only nationwide 5G network.
When Overwatch asked me to design their official team kits, I was honored. This was an opportunity to create gear that for the first time brings together the best of the streetwear world and the esports world. This is technical apparel designed with specs to provide the highest caliber athletes in the esports world with the performance and comfort that they demand.
And just so you know, her armband is clipped, but it says LOVE, so you don't worry about.
Designed to highlight each team's uniqueness, yet resonate with players and fans in the US, China, Korea, France, and all over the world. And of course, gear that needs to look as dope as it performs, both inside and outside the arena. This is it, the official Overwatch League kit. Designed by Staple, engineered for gamers.
The time has finally come.
We're back, Overwatch fans, and we are live from Dallas, Texas.
We are live in New York City.
Come on, this is carnage! It's not stopping! It's not stopping! Now we have a game! Ooh, get rocked! Maybe the Madman can do it! Oh, what is this?
Are you ready?
The semifinals continue here in the Hearthstone Masters Tour Arlington, presented by T-Mobile. As we are currently 2 games into Alan870806 up against xBlyzes, France versus, basically Asia Pacific. Alan numbers, he just has converted to Asia Pacific, so don't know exactly what region, or rather what country he necessarily identifies with, but formerly from Americas. And the important thing is, he abandoned us. He left me and TJ. I'm sad.
Wow. I mean, you know, why wouldn't you? You got to move to a superior region. You got to move up the food chain, right? You go to Americas, then you can get promoted to Asia Pacific, and then finally you can reach the upper echelons.
You couldn't cut it in America, so you had to abscond into the Asia Pacific region.
Well, it's kind of the Tyler story, right? Where he couldn't cut it in Europe, so he ran off to Asia Pacific.
Yeah. We don't really talk too much about that, but, you know, shout out to Tyler. I believe he did not do well this Masters Tour either. He said, you know what, I'm just a streamer again.
Just good old grinder Tyler, he's back.
That's right. As we look into Galakrond Warrior looking to grind down the health points of his opponent. He's going to go Galakrond Warrior versus Highlander Warrior, his best matchup statistically. As Galakrond Warrior does tend to give Highlander Hunter some difficulty. For one thing, you have a lot of mechs, so mech-based removal stuff like Dynamag doesn't work nearly as sure. And then secondly, Highlander Warrior needs a little bit of time to get set up, and they don't always have the right removal tools, so you do have this small window that Galakrond Warrior is really good at in terms of pressure.
Yep, I think if you can get past that window, though, with the Warrior, that is your goal, because then you can just start slamming way too bigger minions for the Warrior on the other side to deal with. But your actual removal is fairly inconsistent, I would say. I think Super Collider can end up being super clutch in a lot of matchups like this. If you draw your 1 Super Collider, suddenly you don't have to be as liberal with your shield slams and brawls and other, you know, big removals like that. So we will wait and see.
Yes, and one thing that I also am noticing in Highlander Warrior decks is that I usually am hard-pressed to even find a single taunt minion. Largely because they are more dragon-based now, and dragons generally don't have taunt. There are a couple out there, but you can't really stop the face damage as easily compared to when you're playing like Tomb Wardens in those Boomsday control.
Right. Wow, this opener, though. Highlander deck, by the way, just draws all of his 1-drops plus the Weapons Project in the early game. Absolutely insane opener from xBlyzes.
Yeah, this will keep him safe for a while. And, you know, as many times people have said Highlander decks, when you're playing against them, they have 2 sides of them. They're very hot and cold. Sometimes they just get like the exact cards that they need that have a lot of powerful Highlander effects. And then sometimes they just draw dead. But in this case, xBlyzes looks pretty set in the early game.
Does. He chooses not to drop the Weapons Project here, which does give the opportunity for Coin Snip Snap for Alan if he wants to go for it, but it looks like Alan is going to turn it down here.
Yeah, he does have a second Eternian Rover, so Snip Snap does have more options versus Temple Berserker pretty much is only good on 1 turn of the game. Snip Snap off the top.
Dan, contact the authorities. This is illegal. You are not allowed to draw like this with a Highlander deck. That is not fair.
On the contrary, my good friend, I believe this is what you are contractually obligated to do when you play a Highlander deck in the top 4 of a tournament.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Sorry. It's being so foolish.
Funny enough, the last time I saw something like that, too, was even in the Masters Tour Seoul, which was also French-dominated.
Yes.
And was also playing a lot of Highlander decks, too. Because that was right after the Saviors of Uldum expansion. Or was it right after the Rise of the Mechs expansion? I think it was that.
That sounds right. Alan looking fairly nonchalant about the situation. Taking it much more in his stride than I would be right now.
Yeah, I would say that this turn could end up being incredibly impactful with how he approaches board control. Is he going to go for, you know, Awaken and kill this off and, you know, maybe push damage? Or does he want to instead coin Korkon Elite? I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting perhaps even exploring the idea of Eternian Rover with Snip Snap.
Right.
Ah, I see. So he makes it so that Awaken has more options on the following turn.
Live wire Lance. Again, the dream draw off the top. Even then, I mean, Tempo Devastator was just fine that turn, but this gives him the opportunity to really spike a pretty useful Lackey, and he absolutely does. You saw him leaning to... What is happening? That's just a nutty outcome from the Faceless Lackey as well. This is absurd. But yeah, you saw him kind of leaning towards the Town Crier was his instinct for the play, and then saw the Faceless Lackey and quickly adjusted to that.
Again, I love Alan's composure. At most, a wrinkle in his forehead, but nothing too much more. Staying focused. What can I do in the situation? Alan had been saving up the Awaken in case he needed to respond to his opponent's board, but going for a pass.
Yeah, he seemed pretty calm. I actually walked past him backstage during the break. I sort of kind of awkwardly walked past him. He said, "Are you cussing the series?" I said, yeah, so I'm not going to talk to you. Which he didn't understand. He thought I'd like offended him. He'd offended me in some way. I was just like, no, just like competitive integrity reasons. I'm not going to talk to you.
Yeah.
So I kept going. But like, you know, he was calm enough to sort of have a laugh and a joke about the situation. So clearly he is in a pretty happy place.
He's just a very chill guy. Kind of reminds me a little bit of... you know, kind of like Sane or Muzzy in terms of their stoic disposition towards the random effects, although it seems like Alan is even quieter in terms of he doesn't really celebrate too much of the highs, but also doesn't really respond or super negatively to the lows.
Yeah.
Which I think is ultimately the mark of, or like that's a kind of personality trait I wish I had, but I am unable to control my rage when I am upset.
Looking at his social media presence, he seems to average about 1 tweet every 3 months as well, which I think helps to avoid getting sucked into the salty vortex.
Interesting. Meanwhile, I am on Twitter every day.
There appears to be a correlation here, Dan.
Tempo War Master Voon.
Damn.
He really wants to close out. And you know another thing too is that xBlyzes is playing very quickly. And if you also look at the body language of both the players, I would actually say that Alan would be winning.
Yes, agreed.
Which is very fascinating. He's very active, he's engaged, he's...
Oh
my God.
Okay, I was about to say, finally there has to be a reaction to this one, and there was. Shake of the head, not once, but twice. I'm awaiting thrice. There is no thrice. Okay.
Just letting the notebook absorb insurmountable amounts of frustration.
This is a beating.
Okay, so
I did not know we were allowed to live broadcast muggings on YouTube, but apparently we are.
Well, hold on. This is what, a 4-card Battle Rage potential here? He has at least 3 guaranteed.
All right, sure. I'm interested.
And the Inner Rage even helps trade up onto the Harrison nodes. I mean, the reason why the...
wow, actually not even respecting the value trades and just going maximum Battle Rage instead. Leaves up the Harrison. Says you are welcome to it.
Yeah, and that's a really big series of events here because now Alan can go toe-to-toe with resources again.
Yes.
That Harrison weapons project play was really swingy, but hasn't completely determined the outcome of the game yet. That being said, it's still rough.
Go ramming speed here? Interesting. I was wondering whether there was like a 3-path opportunity, like warpath 3 times and then push through the damage there for the full clear, but I guess this is... this develops extra stats as well, so actually looking at it in reflection, I like this a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of ramming speed, xBlyzes is playing so quickly. I feel like if we looked at the turn timers comparatively, of, you know, you like juxtapose xBlyzes to, I don't know, Viper.
Yes.
It would basically be 2 ends of the extreme here. I do wish that we had access to stuff like that in a Hearthstone API for a tournament, just kind of like show the average player's turn time, right, and whatnot.
For the war chief!
Yeah, Alan's still in there scrapping, showing no signs that he is out of this just yet. He is continuing to win the board. Right. But it's the fact that xBlyzes has been under no pressure. Oh, what is happening?
Wow. Dragon Maw Scorcher deals 1 damage to everything on the board. And he's not going to go.
Still goes Warpath. Very interesting.
He wants up to 5 mana play.
Sure what he was looking for there. Edwin does usually appear. 2 cards played beforehand is usually the trigger for Edwin Van Cleef, who will most commonly pop up in that spot.
The Brotherhood shall
Just chooses to rip the extra Warpath to make it an 8/8.
Yeah, I mean, based off his hesitation, I think he was expecting something else, and I think he was maybe trying to fish for an Earth Elemental because it is a big taunt, and the Galakrond Warlock needs to manually go through it.
Right.
It doesn't have removal tools to get past these big minions quickly. It often uses its own face as a resource.
Right. But I think because you're playing 2 cards first, I think, you know, in that spot, as just a development minion, it offering you a 3 mana 6/6 is very reasonable over an Earth Elemental that overloads you enormously, so I'm not surprised to not see it come up there. More surprised at just seeing that line of play come out from xBlyzes when there was just that Dragon Maw Scorcher, which just looked so perfect on that turn. Molten Breath takes care of this nice and easy.
Dragon Maw Scorcher should clean it up. Why do you think he was favoring? I guess he was trying to go for the Earth Elemental on the Zephyrs, that makes sense. A second Battle Rage. Alan really wants to activate that last trigger of Galakrond, and I think he finds it in the form of the Devoted Maniac. Potential pivotal moment of this game here. Although he is working very far behind. 42 life on the other side with him at 12.
Yes.
The moment xBlyzes picks up anything super significant, this is a massive pickup. Dr. Boom Mad Genius giving everything rush.
Yeah, it turns that Dynomatic now into a pretty effective removal tool, even if the board is predominantly mech-based. You can just play the Dynomatic, pick off all the minions that are not mechs, and then use it to rush into something else.
Although he will be struggling a little bit with removing the Bomb Wrangler, it seems.
Yep.
Now we can set up this Eternium Rover preemptively. But yeah, Dr. Boom, Mad Genius, giving xBlyzes extra plays, and this card advantage from Alan. Just look at the deck differences. He has drawn 8 more cards.
Right.
Will he be able to use this temporary advantage to close out this game and climb back in this series? xBlyzes picked up Deathwing Mad Aspect. Every single draw from xBlyzes seems to have this incredible impact onto the board.
I mean, to be fair, one does beget another, because when you draw as well as he did in the early game, the way the deck is built is that basically every card left in his deck now makes a huge impact on the game as soon as he plays it. So it really does all snowball from just how good his opening was in this matchup.
That's entirely fair. Does Alan have to face tank this 12 damage to kill off the Deathwing while setting up his own board? It feels so bad. I mean, an alternative is to play other stuff, right? You can play Kronks, you can play your shields, your 2 shields, and go face for 11 damage.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have anything super significant to charge with the Bloodsworn Mercenary right now.
Just summons the 8/8. Yeah, I was going to ask this question, whether you should drop a big taunt instead and just hope that the...
Okay,
Yikes.
but this 10-10 is fierce.
It is. Dynomatic does make quite a good bit of work of this board state, though. The 1/2 Temple Berserker is potentially getting in the way here, though. Jeez.
I mean, that is a great draw, but xBlyzes is under a lot of pressure right now.
Oh, wow, this is cute. Yeah, he plays the Bomb Wrangler first because then any bomb that he spawns just gets rush and ends up in being more removal in the long run. That's actually a really smart sequencing from xBlyzes. 1 damage on his Bomb Wrangler is, on average, way more valuable than 1 damage on any of his opponent's minions. Probably the best way to look at it. Yep. Beautifully done.
Pressure is almost over, although that is an inner rage, which allows Alan to trigger the Bloodsworn Mercenary.
Yep. Does he want to play for board and run into removal options like Brawl, like Plague of Wrath, for example, or does he want to save up for that potential Leroy combo? Because I believe he does still have his Leroy remaining in one of those 2 cards, right?
Yeah, it is a tough situation because, you know, you don't develop enough, your opponent just develops right back at you. You develop too much and basically give all your resources in for 1 giant AoE. Plague of Wrath doesn't have an easy activator though, so it would be just Brawl.
I mean, if you're doing Inner Rage Bloodsworn Mercenary, it's kind of activated for you already, right?
Fair enough. Yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah.
Basically does your job for you.
Actually, I take all that back. Alan doesn't play Leroy in this version of the build.
Yeah, Leroy's, I feel like, been fading out more. That's an expensive Super Collider.
It is.
The Brawl could also go disastrously as well.
Yeah, no reason not to make that attack first. Good stuff. It's a very new card for xBlyzes, but he's, you know, catching some pretty nice points here on the sequencing.
And another pivotal moment here. Alan needs a big minion to survive.
It does. The 10-6.
Doesn't take big damage on it. Alan's almost out of cards. The second Bloodsworn Mercenary.
Your flaws are your strength.
Shield of Galakron. That is 13 damage. Upstairs. 16, I apologize. Blyze is down to 7 life.
Zephyrus is gone. Restless Mummy is not good enough. He needs a Deathwing.
Deathwing. Nozari. Murazond?
Plays a bunch of shielded Galakrons, but I don't think that's good enough, right?
Your flaws.
Yep. Yeah, because it's not damaged, doesn't copy it.
Exactly.
And that will do it. Alan somehow weathers the nastiest of storms and is able to climb back into the series and win game 3.
Even with that sequence of draws in the early game, Alan was able to find a way to just hang on to his tournament life for at least 1 game longer. The Galakron Warrior does pick up the win, but now Highlander Warrior still remaining, and there is the Quest Druid and the Highlander Hunter on Alan's side. And I would say that all of these certainly pack the punch that is needed to be able to run over a Control Warrior.
That's right. So now we move on to either Hunter or Druid, which still could give Warrior some fits, but if that was Alan's best matchup on paper, I don't know. But then again, you were talking about how good Blyze's draws were. That's not always going to happen. So we are going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get game number 4 underway between Alan and xBlyzes with a spot in the grand finals on the line. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hearthstone Masters Tour Arlington is brought to you by T-Mobile. Rank up with America's first and only nationwide 5G network.
T-Mobile 5G is here, and it's nationwide. While some 5G signals go only blocks, T-Mobile 5G goes miles, beyond the big cities, to the small towns, to the people. Millions of Americans can have access to 5G on T-Mobile. This is just the beginning. T-Mobile, the first and only nationwide 5G network.
The time has finally come.
We're back, Overwatch fans, and we are live from Dallas, Texas.
We are live in New York City.
Come on, this is carnage! It's not stopping! It's not stopping! Now we have a game. Ooh, get rocked. Maybe the Madman can do it. Oh, what is this? Are you ready?
Masters Tour Arlington semifinal number 1 continues, presented by T-Mobile, as Alan Numbers able to get a crucial victory, and some of his friends have joined the venue and cheering him on. I see Hunter Ace and San and a couple of other practice buddies, I assume, of Alan are cheering him on. Meanwhile, there are lots of fans, I would say a legion of French fans online cheering for xBlyzes as well as A-Rock and Felkane, the remaining French players in this tournament. 3 out of 4 are from France. And then there's one lonely Asian Pacific player.
You'd say there is pretty good odds of them coming out of this with a winner that they can call their own, and there are pretty good odds of xBlyzes coming out of this series with a win to his name, because he is in a very favorable position, still being 2-1 up, still has 2 bites of the cherry, and he does have a potentially good matchup to come up against this Quest Druid, although I don't know how much that extra King Feoris might just add that couple of extra percentage onto the Quest Druid that might tip it over the edge. Maybe Alan can find a way out of this one still.
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting question. Statistically, it shows that Quest Druid is slightly unfavored, but I mean, how many people are truly playing Quest Druid right now on ladder versus the ones playing it in tournament? And then you mentioned even things like King Feoris, which I believe we had almost as the exact same argument back when we were playing Quest Druid versus Control Warrior.
Yes.
And it was like, how much is King Feoris relevant versus some of those other cards like Zephyrus and other things that were being played in Quest Druid?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a very different animal back then, because the one card that you did always want to have in your deck against Control Warrior was Elise, the Enlightened, and that would give you the opportunity, you know, whatever top-end threats you had, you could at least start duplicating multiple copies of them. That is not the case with this Druid deck from Alan. It's a lot more honest in the sense of, you know, just the cards that are in the deck list, and then the things that you get from Ysera, and then you are pretty much tapped out.
Wow. Dragon's Roar summoning some of the most powerful dragons Athros has ever seen. Deathwing Mad Aspect and Caligos. A little yin and yang there. Alan also has his own dragons that are set up too. Ysera Unleashed and King Feoris. I imagine that there's just a ton of removal options, and people on ladder tend to jam things very often. And by that I mean that they tend to say, you know what, maybe he has it, maybe he doesn't. I'm just going to present the biggest threat I can right now, and then they end up playing directly things into Brawl and Plague of Wrath and whatnot. So I think that probably accounts for some of the statistics that we do see.
xBlyzes playing full for tempo again here, just throws out the Militia Commander, trying to get some early pressure down on the Druid. Again, we've seen that in matchups against this Druid deck, but also classically in previous metas of Control Warrior versus Druid. If they are going to be successful, getting some of that early pressure down is key, because it forces them to use some spells reactively. And if you can suck those spells out of their hand, that's then a minion that is not coming out from King Feoris later on in the game, so it can have a huge impact.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of impact, I think xBlyzes is kind of counting his hand like, how can I use food here? I'm going to get 4 Deathwings? Because he has the one that he just drew that's native to his deck.
Yes.
That is definitely an interesting thing to think about as Alan prepares and debates whether he should Wrath this. And there is an argument to hold on to the Wrath, because you will finish the quest next turn.
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, Warrior isn't exactly an aggressive, well, this type of Warrior isn't exactly an aggressive deck. Perhaps you could take your time and Hero Power instead.
That is exactly what Alan is going to do.
Right. Preparing for the quest completion.
There isn't a big power play for the quest completion, though. You really want to be seeing Oasis Surger or Nourish by the time you have quest completed, just so you can start doing powerful things as quickly as possible. Alan doesn't really have access to that, and I think that's a big part of the reason why he doesn't want to just commit that Wrath to removal, is that he needs the card draw right now. He needs to get through his deck and start hitting that Nourish, because Nourish is really the power card against Warrior, for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking for potential Nourish off the top, does not find it. Sees Crystal Merchant, helps draw a card. Still though, Alan, I would say, big chillin'. Not really too stressed out about this. does seem like an easy way to use Starfall, though. However, you can get so much more out of Starfall if you wait as well.
Yes. And again, how much do you value having that Starfall being a 5-drop for you when you're going to end up playing your King Feoris? All of those things need to be considered. But Alan says he needs to reduce some of this pressure. He can't just sit around and let, 7 or 8 damage smack him in the face every single turn. I think from xBlyzes' side, number one concern here, as you said, is he just needs to get some cards out of his hand.
Well, he's saving the coin because I think ultimately he wants Dr. Boomad Genius to come out on 8. But now...
No, he is going to go for the duplicate right now. I think he just makes himself enough space here.
Well, what's funny is that Deathwing is, true to his nature, not really one to share the spotlight, so Deathwing ends up killing himself.
Just plays a Deathwing every turn for the rest of the game.
Yeah, but if he's ahead on board, he's...
yeah, that's fine. If he's ahead on board, he can just smack him in the face for 12 and pass. Who cares?
Fair enough. What is he going to burn? What if he burns a really powerful card like Dragon Queen out ramming speed? I was waiting for like a big land like Brawl goes out, and all of a sudden King Feoris is just like super threatening.
Yeah. I mean, he has 4 Brawls attached to 12-12s in his hand right now, so I think he's doing okay.
Yeah, I like this idea that Alan's flirting with, which is just Ysera Unleashed early, because then you can disperse the dragons.
Yes, you do not want them all to come out in one burst against Warrior. That is a situation that you'd like to avoid if possible.
Oh, Alan finds the floop. Now we're starting to get some real spicy stuff.
Yep.
Although it's just Deathwing Mad Aspect.
Did he? I think that's the duplicate of the random one.
No, that was the one he drew naturally from his...
That is, no, you're right, yeah. The second one in his hand is the one he drew naturally. Yep, correct. So he did choose to play the right one.
And so Alan knows that it's been duplicated as well, so he's expecting a second one at the very least.
Yes, most likely not a third and a fourth.
And there it is, Ysera Unleashed. Does not really match up well versus just a empty board and a Deathwing, but okay here. Hold on, how much damage is this?
There's no way to add the extra, right? You can get the Wind Fury down or the Blessed Champion down on the 12 to get 24, 26 from the Live Wire Lance.
So there in the Lackey. Bolton Breath doesn't go face. Okay.
Yeah, you can. Mortal Strike? If you went swing the Lance, get the spell Lackey, pick Mortal Strike, play Mortal Strike, play Zephyrus, it would give you Wind Fury.
That trade hurt to see. I mean, I don't think I disagree with it. It just hurts to see. That's all. More Yseras, interesting. At that point, more than half your deck is Ysera portals.
Yes. He's giving out the nod,
or exactly half your deck is portals. And it makes sense, I think that the Ysera Unleashed layers of threats is better than the King Feoris 2 waves of threats, especially when you know your opponent has Deathwing Mad Aspect in hand.
Yes.
Big board. A Deathwing Mad Aspect.
We definitely do not have enough of those this game. That noise really grates me for some reason. I don't know why.
It's the sound of freedom.
Apparently, I'm just allergic to freedom, Dan.
I can tell.
Yeah.
Zephyrus coming out to answer the board through a Twisting Nether.
I mean, well, I was fairly confident that Twisting Nether was going to be offered, but you go nice to make sure.
Still, that's only 3 portals with 11 more to go.
Yep.
Wax-a-Dread!
Oh, the Wax-a-Dread
appearance. Hey, I heard this game was going pretty evenly back and forth. I came to help skew the results.
Yep.
And I mean, Alan doesn't have to do anything else, actually. He can just chill.
Can just chill if he wants, yeah.
It's an entirely reasonable board.
This is where this, you know, quote, control warrior, the Highlander control warrior, can run into trouble because it is fairly limited on removal. You know, we've seen control warriors in the past playing as much as double Plague of Wrath, double Brawl, whereas this deck is just playing one of each. So its ability to continue to answer wide boards, first off, hinges on that Zephyrus, which was already used. But then after that point, it's quite limited in its ability to be able to deal with these board states. But it's where these Mad Aspect Deathwings are going to come into play if possible.
Right, and I think that's why Alan's thinking about the Power of the Wild, because if the Deathwing came, it could theoretically just clear the entire board.
Yes.
So at least make sure that that can't happen. So he plays one card on top of the 3 portals. 8 portals remain. And here we go. He has to use the one that was copied and where Alan expects it to be. xBlyzes very much in tune with that. Clears 2 minions. Swings. I guess there's a little bit of an order, but it's not really that big of a deal.
Yeah, I guess he could have seen his lackey first, but he was never going to play it before the Deathwing, so.
Again, Alan has a lot of hand space. He could just take it really slow again, or even just, you know, use swipe in this spot. Keep his board healthy, push 10 damage. Your opponent's at 42.
Right.
I do feel like using Oasis Surger is overcommitting in this position. Has to kind of thread the needle. Oh my. Oh my, King Feoris has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spells in hand, so there wouldn't even, I guess you use Innervate, so it wouldn't be super.
You just throw away an Innervate, yeah.
But your opponent also does have this Kaboom as well. Okay, find some middling creatures.
6/9 Scorpion is a pretty huge outcome.
Yeah,
that slot.
That is nice.
Alan nods. He was expecting Plague of Wrath. He's definitely expecting to see Plague of Wrath there, and he's going to get some good news that it's not coming. Instead, Deathwing Mad Aspect number 3. Pretty important sequencing here. That's not bad.
And so he knows there's a 4th one.
Yes. If he's
Nourish.
been hand tracking correctly, he will know that that was in hand when the War Master Voon copy effect went off.
Still a ton more portals to go through here.
Yep. This is very likely to end up being a full board again with the 3 total cards being drawn. There we go. They don't stop coming.
It is not yet your time.
Maybe a little bit more than Alan was hoping for, but
there it is. Huge board again. Just passes. Says that is good enough for me.
it's just non-stop big things after big things being dropped by Alan, and Blyze just responding with his own big things.
Just big, meaty lads slapping into each other.
It's doing a lot for me right now. Deathwing, Mad Aspect. Feels like it has such a... If it clears like the left side of the board, you're so sad, but if it clears like all of the right side of the board, you feel so good. So I feel like because of that variance, you probably have to hold off on it right now.
Yeah, it seems fair.
Plus you do have the zap here. Will help control some of that board space.
Yep.
4 more portals were dragged out, so with the 3/3/4, there's only a handful of portals left in the deck here for Alan. I think 4 remain. Plus, he does have the Wax Dread Candle.
Yeah, that is the big problem for xBlyzes right now, is that he can't really reliably fall back on a fatigue strategy where he just kills everything. It's possible, you know, you do still draw the card and take your tick of fatigue when the candle is still on the deck, but just that extra 7/5 that appears every single turn makes that very much difficult.
Right, it just means that your resources just get drained a little bit quicker.
Yes. So I think xBlyzes does need to think about trying to find some board presence of his own here, but he does need to solve the problems as they're put in front of him. And right now, Alan is not taking his foot off the pedal in any regard.
Ferocious Howl, which pretty much gives him the most value, so you might as well use it. I think he's just really hoping to hit the Wax Druid Candle and present just a little bit extra threat.
Time waits for no one.
He does. Noobstop Defender comes down. That heal with the hidden Oasis not going to be super relevant.
Yeah, he's just, since he didn't draw any portals that turn, Alan's just concerned with making sure he has the Mad Aspect Deathwing covered. Just make sure he has enough damage in play that the Deathwing isn't going to stick around on xBlyzes' side, so he doesn't have to react to it.
Oh, Plague of Wrath also drawn.
Has the Dragon Maw Scorcher Plague of Wrath combination now. Woo! Wind Fury and Divine Shield along with the Rush Lackey.
Quick turn out of xBlyzes.
Strictly cheating, managing to get the triple Battlecry effect on the Tiamat. And again, yeah, as you say, it was another quick turn. I do think maybe his quick play has cost him a couple of opportunities. In the previous game, I'm still very confused about that Zephyrus play that we saw, that again, he did end up playing quite quickly, but for the most part, he's playing pretty solid.
Wrath now deals 100 damage with the Azure Explorer. Alan has a few portals left and the candle that he wants to draw with the Wax Dread. Portal.
xBlyzes would honestly quite like to see them all right now. Yep, you see the nods because he has the clear locked and loaded. He wants to see as many of those portals coming out as possible.
And all this card draw in the hand. The Nourish and the Crystal Merchant, they're not going to really do too much here.
Nope. There it is. Line it up. Plague of Wrath. Going to remove that board state.
Yeah, you know, I wonder if we could have held on to that. That was a lot of 2-3s, and I feel like that's where Deathwing Mad Aspect really thrives.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Very good point.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he would have cleared the board, though. It's just one of those things where...
Yeah.
Yeah, you try to find ways to squeeze optimization. But, I mean, it's not a bad play. It's just, is it the best play?
Yes.
Is probably the question.
Exactly. One card remaining now for Alan. Unsure whether that is a portal or not, but we will find out next turn.
What to do?
I believe he's out of portals.
Okay. I will stake your reputation on that statement.
Ooh, that is a pretty unworthy expedition, if you ask me, Subtle.
Mark of Nature is kind of cool, I guess. Yeah, it seems the best of the bad bunch, at least.
It's like a... I mean, it's a Blessing of Kings.
3 mana Blessing of Kings, yeah. Take those.
Put it on Wax Dread.
Put it on the Wax Dread. Kill me, you won't!
Oasis Surgery. Number 2.
Yeah, Alan is going to keep presenting problems. This 9/6 does line up pretty nicely into the Restless Mummy here, and now Shield Block, Shield Slam combination available.
Yeah, he still has to remove a little bit of his own armor. But indeed, it is looking tougher for Alan to close out this game just because it feels like we just play the way that we did this 8 months ago, which was kill all of Druid's stuff.
Oh, reputation damaged, Dan. It's a portal.
Oh, that might be card. Alan is effectively all in. The poisonous minion does introduce a quite interesting tension with Deathwing Mad Aspect.
It does.
But it might not even be relevant if xBlyzes draws Brawl off the top here. He only has 9 cards left in his deck, but he's running out of time.
It's another big reason, to your point earlier, why maybe using the Deathwing Mad Aspect earlier was better, because he can then save his Dragon Maw Scorcher Plague of Wrath combination for when that Loti is on the board, which is a point where his Deathwing is not relevant.
Now, if Deathwing attacks the 5/7, he's dead. If he clears off a bunch of stuff beforehand, He's still a little bit in trouble. So is this a snip snap Zilliax play to try and stall for an extra turn here?
It's kind of what I was looking at, to be honest.
But then you should know the last 2 cards that he will be using as Swipe and Starfall.
Yeah. So you go up to 23 and you would be leaving 23 up on the board. Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Deathwing.
No option. Okay.
Oh, that's only 2 minions.
It's 15 in play, swipe in hand. Alan's going to square up the series.
Of cards.
And you know, Waxy Tread only summoned back twice, but once was all it really needed to deal that damage.
Yep.
Despite having 4 Deathwing Mad Aspects, 2 Caligos in hand.
Yep.
Blyze unable to stabilize, and Alan just narrowly gets over the hump. We have a tied series.
We certainly do. And don't get me wrong, that was an incredibly difficult game to play optimally. I don't think there are many, if any, players in the world that could just come immediately out of that game and said, yeah, I did everything perfect. Don't at me. But it's, I think there were some moments there where maybe xBlyzes cost himself some percentage points in some of his sequencing of his removals, some of his choices. You know, as you were pointing out, his usage of the Deathwing Mad Aspects. I think he might have just cost himself a percentage point or 2, but I think, you know, he came up against basically the best that the Druid has to offer, an early Ysera Unleashed into the early Floop, meaning that he was going to be up against it the whole time. You know, that is definitely not what you want to see as the Control Warrior player.
Yeah, I mean, I think both players had very good outcomes. It was just one of those more flashy ones from the Warrior side where you think about the possibilities that the Warrior could have had with all these high-value dragons.
Right.
But in the end, it comes down to a simple game of tempo, and I have to commend Alan. What a great series of turns, right? That was like an 8-turn lethal setup, right? Every single turn is like, okay, how much pressure can I put? How much pressure? Nope, hold back just enough. Wait, play the power of the wild. There's a lot at stake here, as we are now tied 2 games apiece, and the winner of this will win $10,000. We'll take our final break this series, and when we come back, the last game of this best of 5 at Masters Tour Arlington, brought to you by T-Mobile.
Hearthstone Masters Tour Arlington is brought to you by T-Mobile. Rank up with America's first and only nationwide 5G network.
When Overwatch asked me to design their official team kits, I was honored. This was an opportunity to create gear that for the first time brings together the best of the streetwear world and the esports world. This is technical apparel designed with specs to provide the highest caliber athletes in the esports world with the performance and comfort that they demand.
And just so you know, her armband is clipped, but it says LOVE, so don't worry about that.
Designed to highlight each team's uniqueness, yet resonate with players and fans in the US, China, Korea, France, and all over the world. And of course, gear that needs to look as dope as it performs, both inside and outside the arena. This is it, the official Overwatch League kit. Designed by Staple, engineered for gamers.
The time has finally come.
We're back, Overwatch fans, and we are live from Dallas, Texas.
We are live in New York City.
Come on, this is carnage! It's not stopping! It's not stopping! Now we have a game. Ooh, get rocked. Maybe the Madman can do it. Oh, what is this? Oh,
You ready?
turn up the bass.
Hearthstone Masters Tour Arlington being viewed by some of the competitors. You see the Asia Pacific players cheering on their fellow player Alan Numbers as he has tied up the series 2 games apiece. They're chilling in the LAN area where we do have a spectating viewing area for a lot of the players or any fans that come by. In the meantime, though, this series, which started off very one-sided. It looked like xBlyzes was just going to run away with it. Alan has clawed back through pure grit, and I got to commend him because I felt like he was down and out for a good period of time.
Yeah, and I did. It's kind of curious that it's up against the Highlander Warrior that he's having to form his last stand, because I did talk to Alan a little bit, and he mentioned that Highlander Warrior was just not a deck that was on his radar at all for this tournament. So he really felt like he had to cram to get in information for this semi-final, and he's clearly managed to do that because he's managing to navigate his way through very comfortably.
Yes. Now we have the battle of the Highlander decks. And it could be the Achilles heel of xBlyzes, which, you know, he uses Highlander Warrior so expertly to get to this point, but will it be his downfall to lose 3 games in a row with Highlander Warrior, which just feels so devastating because it felt like you were so close on so many games. Yep. And so here we go, Highlander Hunter. Now it does have the Dragon package in it, as you can see, Stormhammer and Evasive Feywing. That's a curve for the most part.
Certainly is.
How do you want to really fit this into your curve, though, with Animal Companion, which is also something that's great to have early on? Do you just throw away Stormhammer or Feywing and just trust that you'll find other things while trying to shore up your first 2 turns?
I think that's a problem that Alan's faced with right now. I do actually think this is a really, really difficult mulligan. Classically, like, Animal Companion is just a go-to card in the matchup. Was not, I will be honest, expecting to see the full mole come out from Alan. I was expecting one or the other plans to get kept there, either the weapon into Dragon Curve or just the Animal Companion just for the early solid minion. But wow, Alan throws it away and hits the absolute nuts, finds all of the power cards he could ever possibly need.
Does he want to play the Zephyrus now? And if so, is he going for more tempo development? Or is he going to go for future mana considerations? Zephyrus offers you 3 choices when you have an empty board and you play it on 2, and it is Brightwing, Animal Companion, and Wild Growth. And for a while, we thought unanimously you would want to play Wild Growth, but you know, when you have Animal Companion, especially in a class like Hunter, you can really stack your advantages quickly.
Unlucky. Yeah, I really like the Animal Companion there. I think you have 2 minions established on board already, which are almost certainly not getting killed in that spot. So all 3 outcomes for Animal Companion are fantastic, and just look at the curve it enables from that point. He has 3-drop into 4-drop then with Houndmaster Shore, and then from that point onwards, he's just you know, a hair's breadth away from that Dino Tamer Brown on turn 7. So I don't think he needed the Wild Growth to accelerate his curve when he had such a smooth curve anyway by picking the Animal Companion.
Even if the Animal Companion not number 2, but the one that was native to his deck wasn't in hand, I think I would still argue that you want the second Animal Companion. Just because you want to get that early game snowball.
My pack will hunt you down.
xBlyzes has the proper response, though. He's got Restless Mummy, and that will be able to pick apart almost the rest of the board here. And Alan was, you know, he was expecting it. He didn't have any high hopes for this Houndmaster shot. Now the second Animal Companion. Another Leok.
It's so much early game damage. Like, even though xBlyzes has had the answers, it's so much damage that's been pushed through from Alan.
Imagine he didn't have the answers.
If he had just been missing one of those rush minions early on, and you can see he's drawn them all because Town Crier just lands and draws nothing. Sat there as an innocent 1-2 on the board. This is the one potentially problematic turn for Alan, but he does have ways out of it. The draw is very nice. Desert Spear, Diving Griffin was reasonable. Diving Griffin to see what he would drew first. He had options to get out of this, but it's the first turn where he's really not quite going for the throat as he'd like to be doing.
Feywing seems pretty reasonable in this spot. It's 5-4, and you know, it's surviving against Dynamatic.
Against Ziliax, which he knows is in hand because there were no draws off the Town Crier.
But not a turning him over Ziliax.
Yep. And there's the reaction to it, because that is huge. because not only does it clear the board, not only does it gain the health, but it also blocks the ideal target for his Dino Tamer Brand now on turn 7.
So Dino Tamer Brand comes down, and this Ziliax and Eternium Rover combination absorbs 8 damage while gaining 6 life.
Yep.
Sending your opponent back all the way into the mid-20s. That doesn't sound, or the high 20s rather, that doesn't sound very good.
So looks like Alan is going Faceless Corruptor instead with this hero power target.
That sounds entirely reasonable to me.
Sequencing very important here, of course. Make sure you get that hero power in before you drop Faceless Corruptor, if that's going to be your line.
Is there another one we're not thinking of? Diving Corruptor, what can it draw here? Or Diving Corruptor, Diving Griffin. Imagine Faceless Corruptor end up drawing a Rush Minion.
Quickly.
That's what we call a card for the 2020 expansion number 3.
Whoa, changed his mind at the very last moment. Rope appeared and Alan said, you know what? Never mind, I'm gonna play the big thing.
Oh my goodness.
I've never seen someone with such polite reactions to top decks as Alan has. It's just this very small nod, like, yeah, okay, fair enough.
How nice would that Deadly Shot have been the previous turn?
That would have been huge, yeah. Suddenly, all that work in the early game has come undone. Liza's all the way back up to 28.
This Dwarven Sharpshooter, though, still has its application. Diving Griffin deals 4 damage. It's a 4/1 Rush Minion.
Sure.
That plus the hero power plus 3 other mana, which gives you development of other things. However, Desert Spear is not exactly great development.
Nope.
So perhaps instead Faceless Corruptor is what he could be looking at still?
Yes. Depends what gets drawn off the Diving Griffin as well, but if you were to just pick up like Spring Paw, for example, that doesn't really fill your turn out very well either.
What is the best way for Alan to set up Dragon Queen Alexstrasza? Perhaps that's the question we should just be thinking about. And that could end up coming down to an answer of Deadly Shot plus Faceless Corruptor.
Yeah.
Force your opponent to respond and then play the Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. Your opponent's probably going to remove stuff.
That's what I like. This is my instincts at the start of the turn. Just don't overthink it. Just play the most things that you can on this turn. Maximum pressure, force your opponent to react, and then you have the big refill on the following turn.
How does the Priest Dragon, what's it called? Marizond?
Marizond, yeah.
How does that work with Faceless Corruptor? I haven't actually seen that before.
As in, like, would it transform the dragon itself with the battle cry?
To a 4/4?
Unclear. I have not seen it either.
Is it time for the Queen to make her appearance? We've been curving out so far with Alan. Liza's just been getting the exact responses. Pretty mediocre results here. Although, I guess the good news is xBlyzes has used a lot of his removal, right? So hard for him to easily answer his opponent's board.
Yes. Does have the Dragon Queen Alexstrasza of his own. He might just be able to blow straight past this in terms of stats, but Alan is the player that's trying to be the aggressor here. He'll be the player with the initiative in that situation, so ideally xBlyzes would be looking for some removal off the top in this spot.
I like this non-trade. Force your opponent to do stuff. xBlyzes also has a Marizond. Just point that out, by the way. Oh, Dragon Queen Alexstrasza right back. Hoping to hit something big. Emerald Explorer is at least a taunting way to get some bodies on the floor.
Yep. A little bit of removal now with a couple of Dragon Ball Scorchers available, but not the big removal that he needs. He's going to need that Plague of Wrath off the top.
8, 10, 17, 19. What will this Diving Griffin draw? There's still some decent rushers, but there's also some weak ones, as you mentioned. Interesting that Alan favors the early game so much. He has cards like Crystallizer.
Yes.
He's just playing a more proactive getcha Highlander Hunter.
Yep.
We've seen Secret Highlander Hunter. We've seen Dragon Highlander Hunter. We've seen Beasts.
The Beast version's my favorite just because it has a River Croc in it. Like, that just makes me happy.
Simple guy.
Does hit the Spring Paw.
Spring Paw and Desert Spear can clean up a lot of this, but I think the back of Alan's mind also is the threat of the counter swing. What if my opponent has an Alex-Strasza?
Sure. Yeah, Desert Spear and Spring Paw allows essentially all the damage possible to go to face there. He could completely eliminate the 4-8 Taunt with all of the rush minions and the weapon swing, if he would choose to. But he's choosing to be a bit more respectful of the board state on the other side, taking much more efficient trades, costs himself a little bit of face damage in the process. No harm, no foul.
Okay. That was a fairly complicated turn.
Yes.
That I think Murazan will answer completely. Because it summons a couple of Spring Paws and a 4-1 Rusher and Desert Spear, and then you could play Dragon Maw Scorcher.
Dragon,
yeah.
Yep.
This is devastating for Alan. Just answers everything. Well, not everything. The 4-attack minion still survives.
It's an enormous turn, though.
Oh, yeah. Not to mention, again, the counter swing possibilities.
This one's slipping away. Blazing Battle Mage, a huge card for the deck. Like we said, Alan very much valuing having those quick starts. So a Crystallizer in there just as a 1-3. Blazing Battle Mage, of course, makes the cut as well as a 2-2, but that is the downside of putting all those extra early game minions in your deck, is sometimes you're going to draw one when you need some beef instead.
And Zephyrus, does it close out the game here? We have 8, 11, 12.
Nope.
Plus 9 would be 21.
Not quite.
Not quite. But gaining life just for extra insurance.
This one is looking over. xBlyzes did have to clench for large periods as he was trying to find a win with this Highlander Warrior. But unless there is an absolute miracle coming out here from Alan, which I don't think that Corrosive Breath quite fits the bill. 4 from Unleash, 1 from the weapon, 1 from the hero power. At 7, Corrosive Breath is not getting him over the line.
Yeah, and I think Alan did such a good job hanging in there. He certainly earned the respect of many people who probably have saw him for the first time today, or one of the first times that they'll be seeing him. But as we know with Alan, with his Bucharest run finishing in top 10.
10th place, yep.
With his Masters Tour Arlington run ending in top 4. We might be seeing Alan a lot in the future of Hearthstone, so pay attention to this guy, even though it looks like his run stops here.
Yeah, incredibly impressive player. Loved watching him just think his way through a lot of matchups from completely unconventional points of view in Bucharest. Has continued to do that so here, but is going to give up the ghost, and we are going to have a very happy French chat on our hands because French player number 1 is going to find his way into the finals here at Masters Tour Arlington.
That's right. Liza has guaranteed an all-French finals.
It's
at
career
Arlington.
all over again, Dan.
It's Masters Tour Seoul once more. Every other tournament, the French just say, you know what, we'll just claim this as ours.
Yep.
And they're doing it on other territories as well. They've done it in Asia Pacific, and now they've done it in Americas. And of course, everyone knows how good the French are on their own home territory. So well done. Congratulations to xBlyzes. What a slugfest back and forth. That was a great series of Hearthstone.
It was. I think that Druid versus Control Warrior game was the meatiest game of Hearthstone I have just ever seen in my life.
It was like,
just
here's your bone-in steak, and here's your baby back ribs.
Yeah, and by the way, you don't get to eat it. I'm just going to pick it up and slap you in the face with it.
Take both drumsticks off this whole chicken. Boom. And xBlyzes ends up getting the last lick here, as we are settled with the top half of the bracket. xBlyzes takes it 3-2 over Alan Numbers. What's going to happen on the other side of the bracket? We will find out soon, as Sato will be bringing you the action with Doa.
Yep.
And then TJ and I will be taking home the French, apparently.
Yes.
At Arlington. Who's going to join them? You know, Felkane and A-Rock Last time we saw two French players, Felkane was kind of really putting himself in the international spotlight. He'd already been doing very well amongst the French and the European audience.
Right.
But now we don't really question Felkane. Can A-Rock use this opportunity to potentially join Felkane in Grandmasters as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I talked about it a lot, is that he's had a very spotty record up until this point. Again, I don't want to take anything away from any player who qualifies for these events, because that is very difficult in itself. You're already a good Hearthstone player if you can make your way through those qualifiers. But he'd been finishing in the hundreds up until this point. So when you do get this opportunity, you really do have to grasp it with both hands and really try and maximize this opportunity, turn it into a Hearthstone career as opposed to just a Hearthstone hobby.
All right, well, with that, our first semifinal is done. The second has been set. So when we come back, that guy is going to be casting alongside Saddle. You're watching Masters Tour Arlington. We'll be right back with more Hearthstone action.
Hearthstone Masters Tour Arlington is brought to you by T-Mobile. Rank up with America's first and only nationwide 5G